In this video we want to introduce some of the ideas behind business functions and processes. Now you'll see from the slide in front of you there are two videos on this topic. In fact, there are many videos that subscribe to filling out our understanding of various business functions that are included on the course and should be consulted. But this particular one is very introductory and quite straightforward, as is part 2, but it's a big topic, so it's broken into two parts. So let's start. Well, an organization is considered as a living organism, a system which operates within a constantly changing environment. So organizations are not static. Organizations are composed of people, and people are subject to various influences, mostly influences from the environment or from within their own lives. But they are constantly evolving. We have more experience with technology, more experience with modernity and innovations and change, and we take these into the organization with which we are associated. So the organizations themselves are, in a sense, mutating over time. And they're changing in line with the changes within society and in line with what is current practice within society. But there's also, of course, the influence of changes in the social structure of the society, and that in turn impacts on the legal structure. So we have issues associated with health and safety, employment law, and so on, all to do with the constantly evolving nature of the organization. So to that extent we can almost see organizations as living organisms. The organization is seen as a process. They function by performing inputs such as human, physical and financial resources, and they convert these inputs into outputs, the final products. So it's a process. And that's what organizations do. They deal all the time with making changes to inputs, converting them into outputs. The inputs are, in a sense, bought in at a certain price. That might be a very crude way of putting it, but they're bought in at a certain cost or a certain price, and they're processed, which incurs a cost, and then they are dispatched at the other end and sold on, presumably at a profit. So organization is a process. It converts the inputs into outputs. A process refers to how things get done. It encapsulates a range of business activities such as culture, behavior, structure and systems. There are presumably in most organizations a variety of ways in which the inputs can be converted into the outputs. A variety of technologies may be employed, or a particular configuration of workers and machines, and so there are all sorts of possibilities, and to that end culture and behavior and structures and systems, they're all interlinked. And essentially what happens in most cases, at least, is that the outcome is one which is compatible with the culture from the wider society. So people are expected to work for certain hours, perhaps during the day, perhaps to have rest periods and holidays and sick leave and so on. Their behavior at work is broadly in line with their behavior or expected behavior within the society. There should be absence from bullying and absence from abuse, and it should be an atmosphere which is conducive to work and seen as safe for everyone within that structure. So the process refers to how things get done, which by and large should generally accord with the processes in the wider society. An organization plays a key role within their community. They have a function which determines their purpose. Organizations provide employment. and are therefore important within communities because workers receive an income from there and they're able to spend the income and support second layer organizations such as local shops and local traders. So there is an importance to organization that transcends the mere transformation of inputs into outputs. This is a wider community-wide importance that needs to be associated with organizations. Organization functions, what they do, and processes, how they do it, are interrelated. They work together in order to achieve success. Well, clearly the two functions are related. It depends on the nature of the product being produced. So if they're producing some piece of engineering, for example, and they may be working with metal and processing the metal into particular shapes or into particular components, then clearly they will use perhaps machinery and various bits of technology to enable them to carry out those functions. They're linked. If they were in the textile industry, they would have a different set of machines and a different set of processes to undertake the functions. So they are linked. Organizations' functions, I should say, and processes are connected. They work together in order to achieve a success. The basis of an organization includes three key elements: people, structure, and objectives. Well, clearly we need people. People must be there, otherwise nothing will happen. The machines will not run themselves. The processes in the office will not conduct themselves. They need people. They need to be enacted. And there must be a structure. There must be a way in which the people and the resources of the business combine to achieve the output. Excuse me. And also there must be objectives. There must be a goal. There must be heading in some direction. They must have a purpose. Otherwise it'll be aimless and they will not achieve any defined output. They will just it'll be confusion. They must have direction. They must have purpose. So the interrelationship between functions and processes. Well, there will be an organizational culture. The organizational culture is the way in which management and workers interact. It's the respect they show each other. It's the functions they perform and how they link to each other. So there's an organizational culture. It may also go outside the organization and may impact on the relationship between the organization and the customer, or indeed between the organization and a wider society. So what is the culture of the organization? How does it present itself to its employees, to its customers, and indeed to the community? Is it seen as broadly supportive of good management and good relationships with each of these particular I suppose stakeholders, as they are? So how does it present itself? What is the organizational culture? And the goals and objectives, what is it trying to achieve? And how is it going about those? What's the function of the organization and where is it aiming? What's it attempting to do? What's the vision and the mission of the organization? Where would it like to see itself in, let's say, 5 years' time or 7 years' time? What does it want to achieve? And what strategy is it pursuing? What's its strategy towards its competitors, or towards its workers, or towards the market, or towards marketing? Or what is its strategy exactly? How is it going about its task? And how is it organized? What sort of structure does the organization have? Is it based around the product? Is it based geographically? Is it a matrix structure? We'll talk about these later. But what sort of structure is it, and why is it got that structure? And how are decisions made? Are they made democratically, involving the workers? Are they autocratic? How do the decisions come about within the organisation? And what are the functional areas of the organisation? If it's a large organisation making complex products, many products perhaps, it'll have many functional areas. Perhaps it's making something quite narrow and focused, in which case it might have a restricted number of functional areas. Let's talk about the vision and the mission. Well, Mintzberg defines a business mission as a mission describes the organization's basic function in society in terms of the products and services it produces for its customers. So it describes the organization's basic function in society in terms of the products and services it produces. A mission statement illustrates the purpose of an organization. This typically involves a brief statement of the current business intentions. So a mission statement is normally a very short statement, maybe 20, 30 words maximum, something of that nature. Very short statement which encapsulates what the business does. It explains what the business does and what the business wants to see. So it's a short statement. It's aspirational in a sense. The business is committed to giving good service to the customer, rewarding the employees, operating ethically, and so on. It'll involve words of this nature. It'll be a short explanation of the nature of the business and what the business believes. It addresses the questions: who are we and what do we do? In essence, your products and services and your target customers. So it sets out very briefly who we are and what we do. And also how we do it in a sense. For example, we do it ethically, we do it properly, we do it with care and attention towards our customers, towards the environment, and towards the community. A mission statement is mainly found in a company's annual reports or on their website. You can often see it on the website if you access, particularly some of the bigger companies. They will have a page in which the mission statement will appear. So it's possible to check mission statements, usually quite straightforward, by accessing their websites. So we have the purpose, why the business exists. Then we have the values, what management believe in. The standards and behavior, the rules that guide how the business operates. And the strategy and scope, what the business and how, what the business is now and what it wants to be, where it's going to go and how it's going to do it. So we have purpose, values, standards, and strategy. Let's talk a bit more about the vision and the mission. Well, a vision statement paints a picture of the future. An organization's vision statement is their inspiration of what they aspire to be in the next, say, 3 to 10 years. It's their vision. It's what they want to be. It's where they want to go. It's how they want to be seen in the next number of years, let's say 3 to 10 years. It provides a basis for future strategic planning, because once they've got a vision of where they want to be, then the strategic plans can be put in place to try and make that happen, make their vision happen. The vision statement answers the question, where do we want to go? Where do we want to go? And once the company has determined where they want to go, then that can enter the strategic plan. And the strategic plan will in turn start to determine the operational plans, and the operational plans will mean that the organisation is working towards their vision. A strategic vision guides organisations to a particular strategic path and moulds an organisation's identity. So the mission, the strategic vision I should say, guides the organisation along some strategic path. The strategic vision is where the organisation wants to be, and it also sets out how the organisation can go about doing this. So it starts to generate ideas that can filter down into operational plans. So the operational departments within the business can see what their obligations are in terms of the direction they need to move in, which will start to determine the skills and competencies they need to see amongst the workforce, the types of capital they're using, the processes they're engaging in, the types of change they need to bring about. A good and well expressed strategic vision expresses management's aspirations to the stakeholders. So the strategic vision tells the stakeholders what the business is aiming to achieve. It explains to the stakeholders where the business is going. And the stakeholders are not just the shareholders, they're the managers and the workers, even the local community, the suppliers of raw materials and components, and it explains where this business wants to be. The vision suggests future ambitions, should also specify exactly how the organisation aims to achieve their vision. So it should set out a map of how it's going to achieve what it's aiming to achieve. How is it going to do it? How is it going to marshal the resources and organise the resources to achieve what it wants to do? And what sort of reputation does the business want to have? And how will it achieve that reputation? And also, how will it perhaps realign itself within the market? And it'll do all of this, of course, in the context of a competitive market situation. It may have competitors who are trying to gain competitive advantage over it. It'll also do it in the face of changing technology, innovation in the market, and changing customer tastes. So it's quite a complex thing to achieve. It's even quite a complex thing to draw up. To try to imagine where a company is going to be in 5 or 10 years' time is almost impossible to conceive of. But companies have to have a direction, otherwise they are drifting. Aims and objectives. Well, the aims are the broad long-term targets. These are the broad long-term ambitions of the business. And the objectives, well, these are qualified and time-based to achieve the desired goal. So the objectives tend to be more quantified and timed and measured, whereas the aims are broad, quite general statements about where the business wants to be. The objectives could be specific targets that are identified by the organisation. For example, to grow the business by 2% in the next year, or to enter a foreign market within the next 3 years. These are objectives. They're time-based, they're quite specific. The general aim could be to grow the business. Very vague, but that could be the general aim. Aims are extracted from the mission and in preparation for strategy formulation. So the aims come out of the mission. What does the company want to do in the next 5 to 10 years? Where does the company want to be? in terms of its position in the market, the types of product it makes, its reputation. In terms of its growth, where does it want to be in terms of size? What markets does it want to be operating in? What is its reputation in the marketplace? So these are quite big statements and quite long-run statements. So the aims are derived from the mission statement. An aim is a future plan for the organization's expectations and what they hope to achieve. So the aim is based on the organization's expectations and what they hope to achieve. If the organization aims to have a particular position in the market, wants to be market leader, for example, then the aim would reflect this. One of the aims of the organization would be to be dominant in the market. But to bring about that dominance, there may be a set of objectives. For example, it would need to invest in more capacity, and it needs to specify how much investment is required. It may need to employ more specialists within the marketing area. It may need to innovate the product, and so on. These are the objectives, to try and achieve these, which will subscribe towards the achievement of the aim, which is based on the mission of the business. Aims tend to be broad and reflect the purpose of the organization, as I said earlier. Now, aims determine the function of an organization. Factors such as activities, inputs, outputs, resources, end product, and the association with the external environment. So the aims determine the function of the organization. They determine what the organization wants to achieve over a long period of time. These are the broad aims of the organization. And, of course, to achieve those aims, there must be recognition of factors such as the activities of the organization, the efficiency of the organization, how it goes about its daily tasks, its inputs, its outputs, of course, the resources it uses, the end product it produces, and so on. But there will be also other parts to this. For example, commitment to quality, commitment to efficiency. It may run alongside other policies, for example, perhaps a JIT regime where they try to minimize stock holding and run a very lean organization. The success of an organization is dependent on their ability to achieve their aims and objectives. Well, that's how we would measure success. It's the extent to which they have achieved what they set out to achieve. If they haven't achieved it, of course, they've failed. Oddly enough, they may not achieve what they've set out to do, but they might still be in existence, in which case they've failed on their strategic mission. They've failed to achieve the aims they set themselves, but they've managed to survive. Sometimes organizations have to make rapid decisions to change, so that there is a jettisoning of aims and a realignment of their commitment in terms of the mission statement. And this could come about because, let's say, customers change against the product. If the customers vary their demand for the product because there is a change in tastes or fashions within the society, then organizations should be flexible and should be able to incorporate the requirements of the market fairly straightforwardly and easily, if possible. But it does mean, for example, their commitments to a previous set of requirements may have to be jettisoned, may have to be thrown overboard, and a new set put in place. Aims provide a strategic direction. All activities are geared towards the achievement of the aim. Well, as I said before, it's important that organizations do have an aim. If they don't have an aim, they're drifting, as I said again earlier. It's important that they must identify some target that they want to achieve and then work towards the achievement of that. Now the aims, the need aims, and these are important because they set performance standards. All activities and efforts are directed at a common goal. If they haven't got an aim, they can't measure their performance. They don't know how well they're doing because they don't know how far they've moved. So they need to have some sort of standard by which they can measure their performance. They know if they're not achieving, they need to address certain issues. They can only know these if they have specific aims, these broad aims. They want to grow in the market, or they want to achieve a certain market position, or they want to enter a foreign market, or some such aim. And they know if they haven't achieved it, then they haven't been performing well. So it's an indicator to them of their own performance. A focus for planning and management control and inspection of activities. Well, having aims means that there is a focus. They know what they're doing. They know what they're trying to achieve. So there is a focus. And it enables management to concentrate on the aim and look towards organizing the rest of the business around the success in terms of the achievement of that aim. Trying to organize the resources, organizing production, organizing finances, marketing initiatives, new product development, all around trying to achieve the aim that's been set. So it does act as a focus for management. It gives management a sense of purpose and enables them to concentrate on particular tasks. It guides decision making and responsibility and accountability and justification. It's important that the management make decisions, but the decisions should be consistent, and all the various layers in management should be making decisions which are consistent one with the other. And the way to do that is to have an aim above it that all are subscribing to. And if all the management are subscribing to that aim, then the decisions, the individual decisions they're making, even on a day-to-day basis, should be addressing the aim of the organization. So all organizations need aim. They're important. Aims determine the type of organization structure which will help the organization in achieving its targets. So even the structure of the business will be based on the aim. Is it a matrix structure, or is it a product driven structure, or is it geographic, or what sort of structure is the business? And the type of structure should address the requirements for the achievement of the aim. There should be a logic in the structure which is consistent with the achievement of the aim. Aims are broad and used to execute objectives and policies. So everything fits under the aim: the objectives of the business as determined by management, the consistency of the decision making, as I said earlier, the direction of the business, and there should also be another layer to this that needs to be borne in mind, and that is the aim itself should be realistic. It should be one which is achievable. It's pointless having an aim that is not achievable. We'll talk about this again in a moment. Aims and objectives are linked, and objectives are derived from the aims. As I said earlier, the objectives in a sense cascade out of the aims. The objectives then in a sense, move through the various layers of the structure of the business and give focus to each one of those, and the achievement of those objectives will thereby be aggregated into the achievement of the aim. Objectives are smaller targets. Once achieved, will help the organization achieve their aims. So they're much smaller targets. They're much more detailed. They're easily understood. They are specific targets. But really, those individual targets, in a sense, are all aggregated up. They're all added together, and this should move towards the achievement of the overall aim of the business. Objectives must be smart in order to be measured and monitored and evaluated. As I said a moment ago, it's important that the aims are achievable. It's important that they're realistic. It's important that they have a time dimension, and so on. And probably one of the best frameworks that can be applied towards the analysis of aims is the SMART framework. Aims and objectives work towards meeting the business mission. So it's important that the business mission be clearly stated and the aims derived logically from it, and then the objectives based on the aims. So that's the way in which the organization travels. It travels from very specific objectives through to much wider general aims, and the aims are derived from the mission of the business. Let's look at the SMART framework in the context of the selection of the aims and objectives. Well, they should be specific. If the objectives are very vague, then they're not going to be achieved. If the aims are very vague, then it will be impossible to derive the objectives from them. It's impossible to know exactly what's entailed, what's meant by the aims. So they must be specific. It must be possible to determine the aims and thereby determine the objectives. So they must be specific. They must be clearly written down. They must be clearly explained. They must be measurable. The objectives certainly must be measurable. The organization may set itself to grow by 5% in the coming year. That's measurable, 5%. They might set itself the target of entering a foreign market in the next 3 years. It's measurable. So whether it's a success or not can be measured. It should be achievable, as I said earlier. If it's not achievable, it shouldn't be there. It's a nonsense. It's not achievable. It's not even an aspiration. It can't be done. So the aims and objectives should be achievable. And in terms of objectives, which have got specific measures and specific requirements, these should be achievable. If the company says it's going to grow by 5% in the next year, that should be achievable. So that becomes the objective. If it's not achievable, it shouldn't be there, because it'll just lead to frustration, annoyance, and it can be a demotivator for the managers because they know they can't achieve what's been asked. It should be realistic. It goes with the achievable, but what is realistic? Does it conform to the understanding of the management in terms of the requirements? Do they consider it to be realistic in terms of its achievement and its measurability? How can it be measured? Is that reasonable? Is it realistic? Do they understand how it's going to be measured? If it's specific, is it precisely specific, or is there room for interpretation? Overall, it should be realistic. In other words, the management should know exactly what's required of them and set about achieving that. And of course it should have a time dimension. If it doesn't have a time dimension, it's open-ended, it'll go on forever, or could go on forever. It needs to be brought to a head so that performance can be measured. So if the organization says it's going to grow by 5% in the next year, that's it. There's a time dimension. It's in the next year. And the management can be measured against that. So these are some concepts related to business functions and processes. And this is the very introduction. So what we've done here is we've just simply talked about the mission statement, very broad statement in terms of where the organization wants to be and the type of reputation it wants to have and its position in the market and so on. Usually a very short statement. And then based on that are the aims of the business. Again, very broad, very general. And based on the aims are the objectives, much more specific. And then we apply these set of rules, this SMART framework, to see if all of this is reasonable. If it's realistic, specific, measurable, achievable, time-bound. And that gives us an opening framework for our study of business functions and processes. This is part one of a two-part video, but in fact there are many videos on this course related to business functions and processes. These two are just the two introductory videos. But having said that, let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.